Please listen carefully.
It's Sunday, the 3rd of May 2015, and I'm just heading for a little trip up to Castle Donington area. Little jaunt out, clearing the system. And the reason for this is yesterday I finally experienced something I kind of knew was an inevitable event, but was kind of hoping that it was never going to happen. Naively. Of course it was going to happen. Yesterday I didn't run out of battery, but I reached a significantly low enough point that I had about 3 or 4 miles left, and there was no possibility of me finding a charging point other than a domestic plug socket to charge the Leaf to continue my journey to reach rapid charge. It was a bit of a litany of disasters, frankly. The main contributing factor to yesterday's farce was entirely down to my poor planning. And this was on the back of a rather sporadic decision to make a trip to a place in Norfolk, which is quite a distance from us, about 120 miles away. I woke up yesterday morning, sounds like a blues song beginning, and I'd had in mind for quite a while to visit the Green Britain Centre, which is an eco centre, rather like the well, I haven't been there, but it's an eco centre promoting, renewables. I'm not sure how similar it is to the Centre for Alternative Technology in Llywelyn in Wales, but going there next weekend actually. But yeah, we decided. I said to my wife and family, I said, shall we go over to this Green Britain Centre in Swaffham? It's in Swaffham in Norfolk, which is about 120 miles from us. Of course, the travel cost is insignificant. It's as I've said before, it's a couple of pounds to charge this car. Actually, less, because we charge, especially this time of year, because it's partly charged through solar panels. So that makes the cost of the journey insignificant. Anyway, I woke up and thought, yeah, it's probably a good day to go over there. The weather's reasonable, and we had nothing planned for yesterday. So I said, do we fancy it? My wife Emma said, yeah, let's give that a go, and we asked both our daughters. The eldest didn't want to go; she had a birthday due on anyway, so that was fine. And our middle daughter didn't want to go, so that left us with our youngest son, and he didn't have a choice really. He was coming along with us, get him away from damn Minecraft for a while. So off we jolly well headed. I first of all had the presence of mind to check that the charging point was working okay on Ecotricity's map. What I failed to spot was a small, rather important link on the map, which should be highlighted now, and that link referenced opening times. Now, I thought this wasn't going to be a problem. We were going to go. It's a Saturday. We'll trundle along. Well, yeah, it's fairly predictable what happened, but to cut a long story short, we'd gone to this centre. One of the things I should mention about this place is they have and a big reason why we went there is they have supposedly, I think I'm right, so I may be wrong here. say if I'm wrong. I believe it's Europe's only viewing platform from a wind turbine. So, and it was designed by Sir Norman Foster, none other than he of the Reichstag and other things. So it looked like a really, really good thing to go and visit. Anyway, we merrily headed off and got to... We didn't head off till about, I think, 10:30 in the morning we left. Could have done with leaving a bit earlier, but we headed off about 10:30. And we got to Peterborough fine, no problems whatsoever. That was our first stop to rapid charge there. So we stopped there and we had a drink. No problems at all. And then off we headed towards the Green Britain Centre in Swaffham. So really nice drive from Peterborough through Norfolk on a sort of back road route. And we took in some really nice little villages and places. Yeah, I mean that was a really enjoyable part of yesterday. Just that drive was really pleasant, and the fact we were doing it without, throwing out loads of pollution made it even better. So yeah, we carried on through this lovely countryside, and then eventually got to Swaffham, and we could see, as you approach the Green Britain Centre, you can see the turbine on the right hand side as you're going down the road. You can see the viewing platform. I thought, oh yeah, that looks great. Our son was quite excited to see it, so yeah, we turned up at the place, headed up the road, saw the centre, turned the corner, and there was a small sign on the right hand side which said the immortal word closed. Oh bum, thought I. Well, that's a pity. We've come all this way and the place is closed. Well, we'll make the most of it. I mean, worst case scenario, we've had a really nice drive out and we can have a look around anyway, spend a bit of time in the area. So that's not the end of the world. What was the end of the world, however, was... not quite the end of the world, that may be over-dramatising. What was the big problem was the Ecotricity rapid charger at that location is in the car park, and the gates to the car park are locked. In other words, it's the only Ecotricity rapid charger I've come across which is only available in restricted hours. Now, I suspect there may be others. I'm guessing the Forest Green Rovers location, that may be restricted to certain hours. Not sure. Most of the others are on... of course, the IKEA ones would be restricted hours, but most of the others in all the services are 24/7, so not usually a problem. But this did pose us a bit of a problem because Norfolk is not entirely gifted in the world of rapid chargers. In fact, there's three. There's three in the area, two of which are at Nissan dealers. By this stage, we had 16 miles left on the guessometer, so not a huge range at all to get. And at that stage, one resigns oneself in an electric car to, a long stop somewhere. Again, I didn't think this was going to be a big problem because, well, okay, great, we'll try and find a local. Hopefully, there's a level 2 charger in the area, and we can just spend 3 or 4 hours having a look around. So still not a terrible issue. And I had a look on there's several online maps which document charging points. There's one called PlugShare, there's one called ZapMap. ZapMap's very nice, I like their interface. And sure enough, there was a level 2 charger just almost a stone's throw from the centre in a hotel. So I phoned up the hotel and said, explained the situation, said, do you mind if we pop in and use the charger? And they said, no problem at all. We'll make a small charge. And I thought, well, that's going to be around about £5 probably maximum. A lot of them are around about that ballpark for when private places with these charge. They're around about that price. And I've never had to pay one yet, but in the circumstances yesterday, I thought, not a problem. As it turned out, she came back on the phone and said, actually, if you get something from the cafe, then we won't charge you at all. So that was great. We thought, well, yeah, perfect. We'll have some lunch and we'll have a look around. We'll have a look around Swaffham. Works really well. We'll have 3 or 4 hours in Swaffham and enjoy the afternoon. So we turned up at the hotel and I got the lead out the back of the car, plugged it in, nothing. Now these hotels, all of them use very similar charging points, and there's a switch. Quite often there's a switch on the top of them, which is quite often switched off. So I checked that it was on. Tried the car again. Checked there was no issues with the charge timer. Clicked over right, but in any case, it was within the hours during which the car charges normally, so that wouldn't have been an issue. But checked everything, and it wasn't working. So I went back in the hotel and said, your charging point's not working. Fortunately, there was a charging point next to it, which was unfortunately a domestic socket, standard domestic 3-pin socket. So that meant, I plugged the car in there, thought, and that worked fine. So it must have been an issue with the Menacus, the Type 2 socket. Domestic socket worked fine, and the car started to charge. But the charging times involved when you're charging from a domestic socket are very long. Between, you're looking at 10 hours. So obviously that was out of the question. So I thought, well, we might be here for, if I can find a way to get to a different level 2 charger, that will be fine, because we'll be cutting down our charge time to 3-4 hours. That's okay. If there's another one in the area within, and like I say, we had about 16 miles left on the gasometer, then we go to that one. So I had a look round, and there wasn't really anything within that range at all. So we were stuck there for a little while. We stayed around there for an hour just to get enough. I did spot a Nissan dealership and tried to call them. They were a dealership called Ames in Thetford, and Ames in Thetford were open till 5 o'clock yesterday. So I tried to phone them up to say, explain the situation, and we were right on the cusp. I think they were 18 miles from where we were, and we had 16 miles. So I needed to let the car charge just for a little bit, just to get a couple of miles into it, while we had something in the cafe. I couldn't get through to Ames, the Nissan dealer in Thetford, that nobody was answering the phone. So it came to a crunch point where I thought, well, if we don't head down there, they'll definitely be closed by the time we arrive, and we won't be able to charge at all. And Nissan dealers are all different in the way they provide charging infrastructure for electric cars. Some of them there's no barriers, others there are barriers, all sorts of different things. They're all different because they're all different dealers, so that's fine. I thought we'll head down there, and we're going to have to just get down there, otherwise they're going to be closed by the time we got there. So that's what we did, and we got there at 4:45, so a quarter of an hour before they closed, and went up to the door, and the place was shut. So shut at 4:45, supposed to close at 5. That's a tad annoying. So I walked around the side thinking there might be somebody still around, they might just be shutting up. If there's a socket available outside, I'll just ask if I can plug in and let it charge, so we can carry on. And the guy informed me. Well, he said, "Well, we're closed now." I said, "Well, it's a quarter of an hour early, you know." He said, "Well, no, we're closing now. It's kind of obviously they didn't have much. They didn't have any people going there, or I don't know. They decided to close early for whatever reason." But he said, "We're open on Tuesday," which I thought, well, yeah, thanks. That's useful. We only live 120 miles away. Strange thought pattern there. Why would I, if I were local with a car, why would I need to charge there? I'd charge at home. So, presumably I've travelled from somewhere else. I'm not in a position to wait until Tuesday. It was bizarre. Anyway, he said, "Well, I've got to put the barriers up now, so even if I let you into charge, you wouldn't be able to get out again." So that's a no-brainer. That's not happening. So, well, okay then. I said, "I've got no choice. I'm going to have to flatbed. I'm going to have to get flatbed recovery because I've." He said, "Well, there's a place nearby you could plug in. Could you not find a domestic somewhere?" Well, no, sorry. I was on the dashes at this point. When the car runs right down, it's the dashes appear on the dashboard. That's from about 5 or 6 miles. It goes into that mode. So I knew I had very, very little range left. I said, "Well, look, there aren't any level 2 chargers, so it's flatbed recovery." Didn't seem overly concerned. It was just so a bit annoyed with them, not overly impressed, but hey ho, not really their fault. So I called Nissan Recovery, and you're allowed. Nissan are aware of this potential problem, so they do. Part of ownership is you do get flatbed recovery to a convenient place, convenient location, which is generally the local rapid charger, And so that's what I said. I said, yeah, if you can get me to Peterborough services, that will be fine, because we can rapid charge there. I know it's working. It's online. We were there this morning. So that's not going to be a problem. The nice one on the end of the phone said, "Yeah, that's fine. We can do that. Unfortunately, it's going to be about an hour and a half, up to an hour and a half before we can get a truck to you." I thought, well, yeah, okay, it's bank holiday weekend. It's just one of those, unfortunately. And so I kind of resigned myself to it. Actually, the talk with the woman at the Nissan recovery line was quite interesting. She said that it's by far and away that the biggest issue, as far as she was concerned, was at the moment was charging infrastructure, and the calls that she gets are not related to leaves breaking down per se. They're not breaking down. They are running into issues, unfortunately, issues like I had yesterday, where people are just not able to find a convenient location to get a sufficiently fast enough charge to continue their journey. And that was her observation. So, Nissan must be aware of this, and they have to do something about these rapid chargers. We need more rapid chargers desperately all over the country. Wales is completely bereft of rapid chargers, other than along the M4 corridor. There's some, and I think there's one on the A5 and on the very north of Wales. There's nothing mid Wales. I'm going to Wales next weekend, and I'm going to be wholly reliant on a charge point at Oswestry. If that's down, it's quite a big deal, So that is a big issue. And similarly, Norfolk and Lincolnshire, where I travel quite often to visit family. Lincolnshire has one rapid charge point in Grantham. you know, and if that's down, that's a big problem. Norfolk has Lincolnshire has another one in Boston, near Boston, which is again a Nissan dealer. So the Nissan dealers you can almost discount unless you're travelling during working hours, and even then you're going to have to be finished charging by the end of the day on a lot of them by the end of the working day. So they're having it's like having a petrol station that only works working hours is not especially useful. So if they want people to buy electric cars, they really need to make them viable for normal travel as a replacement for a full car. It's all very well saying, you know, well, it's a second car ideally, or it's an urban car, but you know, a lot of people aren't sufficiently well enough to have two cars in the first place. And there's no reason it needs to be like that. The only thing that is holding back, I think, adoption of electric cars is the charging infrastructure. Yes, there's still some concern by people who haven't experienced them of range anxiety. I haven't had range anxiety apart from yesterday, in any meaningful way. It's just not been an issue particularly. But this charging infrastructure has to be sorted out. If we get to a scenario where electricity pumps are as common as, you know, normal filling stations, it's cracked. It's completely cracked. So long as they're rapid chargers, it's going to be fantastic. And there's they are expensive to install. I think they're £50,000 a pop, actually. But I don't know how much a normal fuel pump is, but I suspect it's pretty pricey. And you're just talking about something that they need to invest in. There's no two ways about it. They just need to invest in these things. So after waiting just under an hour and a half, actually, this guy turns up, recovery truck turns up, and the first thing he says as he comes up to me, from Lithuania, he says, "Why you buy one of these, not hybrid?" I said, "That's a terrible Lithuanian accent." I apologise to everybody from Lithuania. It's hideous. He said, "Why did you buy one of these? Not a hybrid?" And I said, "No, I don't want a hybrid. I really don't want a hybrid. I have to explain this to lots of people. I don't understand. I really don't particularly understand the appeal of hybrids. To me, the decision to go for a BEV, a battery electric vehicle, was to get away from all the mechanical problems you get with the internal combustion engine. The 400 moving parts that can go wrong, any one of which can go wrong and knacker your day, and mean that you have to be recovered, and you can't just necessarily continue your journey, because if it's a part they can't get until the next day or the next week, you've got no car. You know, I wanted to get away from it. I wanted to get away from the servicing costs, from we've got to replace your catalytic converter, we've got to replace your exhaust pipe. How much is that? Oh, just give us 200 quid or whatever. That was a big incentive to move away from that to a vehicle with one moving part. I can't emphasize that enough. That's part of it, and the other part is, why still use an internal combustion engine? It's fundamentally a stupid thing to be using nowadays. It really is a stupid thing to be using nowadays. And the more people adopt electric vehicles, the better things will become. I'm absolutely convinced of that. So you've got to make the demand. You've got to put the demand there, or I felt I've got to do my part here. I've got to do my part in this thing. If I don't buy the vehicles, if I'm not one of the people who says I'm going to buy this vehicle, the vehicles are going to flop. It's as simple as that. Even though they're by far and away the most obvious thing that motor manufacturers should be moving towards, and some people recognise this. Carlos Ghosn, or however you pronounce his name, Ghosn, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, and people like him and Elon Musk of Tesla Motors, they understand this. They know that electric cars are the right solution. They think that internal combustion engines are a product of the last century, of the 20th century, the early 20th century, the late Victorian period, in fact. It's just absurd that we're still having to ignite dinosaur juice to power a vehicle. And having winched the car onto the flatbed, we headed merrily off to Peterborough services. Our little lad enjoyed the trip because he'd never been in a lorry before, so okay, it's one way to get your kicks on a day out, but he quite enjoyed it. I had a good chat with the Lithuanian driver about all things electric vehicles, other vehicles, Lithuania, life in Lithuania, all sorts of things, and it was an interesting chat. We got to Peterborough, and I was able to just drive the car off the back of the flatbed. I was able to drive it on and off because it wasn't broken down. I drove it off and drove it round to the car park, up to the charging point. We plugged the car and started it charging, and we went for a meal. We just had a meal, and had some really nice noodles actually. A noodle bar thing at the extra services there. Very nice. We just sat there for half an hour, 40 minutes while the car charged up, enough for us to get home. And that was the journey really. That was the day. We didn't get back till quite late, what with all the waiting around for things, and we didn't get back till late. I guess it was about 11ish, I think, actually, because we were about an hour and a half from Peterborough. The events of yesterday were going to happen at some point, but I think I was a little bit unlucky, really. In the first instance, it was my fault for not checking the Green Britain Centre was open. If that had been open, then today would have been very different. It wasn't open on a Saturday. Now that seems bizarre, but there you go. That's not something I'd even considered, that the place wouldn't be open on a Saturday. But it wasn't. Lesson learned. Check somewhere's open in future. Fine. Then the second bit of misfortune was the hotel's fast charger, level 2 charger, not working. Again, that was unlucky. If that had been working, then we would have had 2-3 hours in Swaffham, maybe 4 hours in Swaffham even, enough to get back to charge up, enough to get back to Peterborough, and then again we'd have had a nice afternoon in Swaffham and been fine. And then the third bit of misfortune was Nissan not answering their phone. Nissan Ames dealership in Thetford not answering their phone. If they'd answered their phone and I'd have spoken to somebody and they'd said, well, we're closing at 5 and you definitely can't charge the car after 5 o'clock, then I wouldn't have even headed off that way. So 3 bits of misfortune contributed to what happened. If I'd been on my own yesterday, I wouldn't have used a flatbed recovery truck. I would have found a local domestic socket somewhere and plugged in, and I would have got back very late, but I would have just hung around sufficiently long enough to get the car charged up to make the journey to there's a another charger at Ely train station. I would have headed over to that charging point, I think, to charge up sufficiently to get me back to Peterborough. So I probably, I'm not sure. I don't think I'd have called the flatbed, mainly out of pride. My pride has been damaged, make no mistake. Because, of course, the naysayers, the people who think electric cars are a mad idea, they relish this sort of thing. They relish things like the Tesla fires. You have 3 Tesla fires, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. Oh, look at this, electric cars burst into flames and burn everybody inside. What they didn't mention was how many internal combustion engine fires there are a year. Look it up. It might frighten you. You might actually never get in an internal combustion engine car ever again when you find that out. And by the way, on the Tesla fires, they fixed that issue. They were able to update it using software, I believe, and they fixed the issue. And the 3 people involved in those fires, guess what they did? They went out and bought another Tesla. So that kind of says it all, really. But yeah, I knew there was going to be gloating. I knew there was going to be sniggering. Yeah, okay, laugh it up, fuzzballs. It's as simple as that. My fuel bills are pretty much non-existent. So if you're going to get smug, I'll return the smugness. I've never felt like being smug really about electric cars. I like to kind of promote them because I think they're good. I think they're good things. But I've never been smug. I've never been the kind of person, I ain't got an electric car and you haven't. Not at all. I'll talk enthusiastically about them happily with anyone who's expressed interest, which happens all the time because people are genuinely interested when I stop at charging points, and a lot of them have the obvious misconceptions that a lot of people have about them. A lot of them don't know anything about them, and they're genuinely interested. Quite often the first question is, how far can you go in it? How much does it cost to charge? Is another one. And when you tell them it's nothing, their face kind of drops. How much does it cost to charge you? Nothing. No, nothing. He went a bit Spinal Tap there. So yeah, I've never been gloaty about them, but it's quite the opposite. People mock them. Well, guess what, folks? Sooner or later, we're all going to be driving these things because it's just going to become economically unsustainable. Apart from, forget any pollution considerations, it's going to be economically unsustainable eventually to drive fossil fuel cars. If we've only got a few decades left, we need oil for other things. It's not just we can't just burn it and think nothing of it. Forget the pollution. The actual oil itself is valuable for other reasons. So why just burn it and lose it in the atmosphere? It's just stupid on so many levels. It's expensive. It's becoming increasingly expensive to get out of the ground. There's pollution concerns about that. There's the emissions side of it, both in terms of throwing out crap into the air that we will breathe in, and we know what diesel is doing to kids, to everyone. There's the global climate implications of that. If you're a climate change denier, anthropogenic climate change denier, that's not going to mean anything to you. You won't believe that argument. But even if you are, surely you must concede that throwing crap into the air is not good for people. It's not good to breathe in. Then you've got the geopolitical aspects of using oil and burning it to drive cars. Which countries, where is this oil coming from predominantly? Well, a lot of it's coming from the Middle East, the kind of places I would prefer. Frankly, I prefer we didn't do any business with most of these places. Sorry. If you don't respect basic human rights, I would rather my country didn't have anything to do with you. Okay? Maybe I'd rather we didn't go in all guns blazing as well. No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting simply we don't trade with countries that don't respect basic human rights. That's all. So there's that implication. Yeah, that was another big factor for me in deciding to get an electric car. What more can I say about charging infrastructure? Well, yesterday demonstrated quite clearly to me that as things stand right now, you know, I always check that I always check that rapid chargers are available online according to Ecotricity's map, which isn't real time. Which again, Ecotricity's map, come on guys, you're a high-tech company. That map is not very good. Apart from anything else, it's terrible in the browser to use. Sort that out, that's easy. Sort out real-time communications, that would be nice. They keep saying that's something that's going to happen, but yeah, I'm not holding my breath. And a general little rant about Ecotricity, apart from the £250,000 they've donated to Labour, which in a few days we'll find out whether that was money well spent or not. May well have been. I don't know. That's in the future. We shall find out. That's £250,000. Well, that could have bought 5 more rapid chargers for a start somewhere. And there's big swathes of you could put 3 rapid chargers in Wales, bonk 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 down the middle of it, and suddenly you make Wales a little bit more viable for a lot of people. You could do the same in Lincolnshire, in Norfolk, down on the southwest a little. Well, southwest itself is not too bad, but the south looks a bit bare around certain areas of the south. If you just look around the map. And all of these chargers need to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's not beyond the realms of possibility to do this. And if it's a financial matter, then there is an easy solution. Right? When you use Ecotricity chargers, you get a card. I'll show you the card. When you use their chargers, you have to show a card like this. Okay? Like this. And that's an RFID card. That card costs you absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing whatsoever. Now, I don't think that's right. I think what Ecotricity should do is, what I would do if I were them, was I'd make that card available freely to their customers. Yeah, free of charge to their customers. And otherwise I'd make it available on a yearly subscription basis. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, yearly subscription, but frankly, £50 a year would be not unreasonable at all, far from it. But £20 would be more likely. That's more in line with some of the other the likes of Charge Your Car, whose chargers are really, I find them intermittent. Yeah, anyway. I stopped at Charge Your Car charger yesterday in Corby. First of all, there was lots of icing going on. Fortunately, the rapid charger space was empty. All the others were full, or filling up. And I actually had a bit of a word with a bloke who just parked up as I was there, and said, you've just parked in a electric car charging space. He said, yeah, I know. I'm going to the gym, like. Yeah, he's a jolly fella, or from the northeast anyway. There's any issue with that. I'm just explaining the accent for somebody in Northamptonshire. He said, yeah, I'm going to the gym. And I said, well, you realise if somebody turns up to charge the car, they can't get in now because you've locked the space, they can't charge it. Yeah, I know, so what? So, well, if they're going somewhere, they're going to have to wait till you get out of the gym before they can get into charge. He said, well, there's no other spaces. I said, I know, but yeah, it wasn't worth it. He was clearly the kind of knuckle-dragging bloke who couldn't understand reason and was just completely inconsiderate. So, you know, maybe he'll get it back one day. Maybe somebody will block his car when he's filling it electric. Maybe somebody will block his car one day when he's fueling at a fuel pump or something. But yeah, £20 a year would not be unreasonable at all. A membership fee, and if that goes to help pay for more charges, then so be it. You know, ultimately, Ecotricity are generating their electricity from renewables. All their electricity is generated from renewables, so a lot of it's down to their wind turbines or solar, which is fantastic. But they're giving these. You know, Dale Vince, credit to him, he wants to encourage people to embrace electric cars. And even though they talked about starting to use the chargers this year, they haven't. You know, they were talking about the start of this year and they haven't done it. Whether that's because the payment infrastructure can't be put in place in time or what, I'm not sure. But I don't think they necessarily need to do that. Just a subscription model for a year's usage might be more economically sensible than trying to set up payment mechanisms on the machines themselves. Or if they need to do it on a pay per use basis, well, they know who's used the chargers and when. That's definitely the case. So, you know, they can bill you after the event if they want to, but they need. If the fundamental issue in stopping them putting more charging points in is economic, is just one of money, then charge us. Please charge us. Because I would happily contribute membership fees or charging payments, you know, reasonable ones. I'm talking, if you end up charging per use and you charge £5 to do 80 miles, then people aren't going to care too much. You know, that's not an unreasonable cost. Even though it's, you know, that's profitable because the electricity won't cost that much. It definitely won't cost that much. So that's not unreasonable. You're probably making another 150% profit on top of that. But people wouldn't object. I'm sure they wouldn't. £5 to do 80 miles is perfectly fine, really. And then build some more rapid chargers. Get them in Wales. Look at that map. And just go around the country and all the, you know, half the services have been done around on all the major trunk roads now, but people don't always travel on the major trunk roads. People need to get off them to go. Some parts of the country there aren't any major trunk roads, but if you're miles away from a rapid charger, you don't have much choice. It's time to get those put in place. I could just skirt around the map and point out these places. Now, what did I learn yesterday? I learned to double check that place is open that I'm reliant on. That's the main thing. The rest was down to misfortune. But I think has it put me off electric cars? No, not in the slightest bit. Part of that's stubbornness, part of that's a preemptive stubbornness at dealing with the inevitable. you silly sod, you bought an electric car. Kind of people. But mainly it's because all the reasons I've mentioned before. The costs of driving, the servicing costs, the environmental considerations, the fact that it just technologically, it's a sensible thing to be driving. All of those things, and frankly, given the times I've broken down in an internal combustion engine car and then being without the car for several days, or base case scenario, at least overnight while they fixed something, I've never been able to have a car fixed on the roadside. That's never happened. Or my motorbike. Under a year ago, my motorbike broke down. Say what you like about electric cars. My motorbike broke down under a year ago. I was stuck. I had to wait 24 hours for a replacement part for the bike. It cost me more than £300 just for the part. And it interrupted my plans. I had to drive over 500 miles. I had to drive about 520 miles the following day to get where I needed to be. And it was massively inconvenient. Now, I didn't break down yesterday. I have to emphasise that again. I didn't break down. I'm less likely to break down in this vehicle because there aren't as many moving parts to go twang. So I didn't break down. I was close to running out of battery. I didn't need to call a flatbed truck. Again, I'll emphasise that. I didn't need to. I was just being considerate to my wife and my little boy, thinking they don't want to be sat around for hours waiting for this to charge at a slow charging point. So I'm going to just get the flatbed out and be recovered. But having been recovered, I was able to put the car on charge and continue my journey. The car didn't break down. I got back home a bit later. But otherwise, it was an interesting day. May all your days be interesting. Now, I think that's it really.